Hockey Inside Out, brought to you by Videotron.
Welcome to another episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm happy to be joined by Chris Nilan and Dave Stubbs again today. We're going to talk about the Canadiens-Bruins rivalry. Chris, I know you have a Habs logo tattoo on your shoulder. Do you have a Bruins jersey?
Yeah, I have a Bruins tattoo right on my ass, where it belongs. No, awesome rivalry over the years. You know, Boston Bruins could never beat the Canadiens for years in the playoffs, and they finally did it. And I think it was '87 when I got traded, by the way.
Coincidence.
What a coincidence. No, but just a great rivalry. The fans, the media, everybody gets whipped up in a frenzy when Boston plays Montreal, and that's during the regular season. Playoffs, forget about it. It's a tornado.
And
it's just unbelievable.
Here's why this is a great rivalry too, Chris. You know, you go back, and Canadiens fans of a certain age will talk about the Canadiens and the Maple Leafs being the great rivalry. And you know what? It was. In the original 6 days, that was a tremendous rivalry. But the last time the Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs met in the Stanley Cup playoff round was 1979. Since that time, the Canadiens have played the Bruins 16 times in the playoffs. And you talk about the Canadiens always beating the Bruins. They beat them 18 straight series from 1946 to 1987. I mean, Harry Sinden, of course, famously said there are three things that are constants in life. There's going to be death, taxes, and the Bruins getting jobbed at the Montreal Forum, right? The ghosts were going to come out of the rafters.
Oh,
yeah, there was going to be
excuses. Just never had a good enough team. To be honest with you, they didn't want to spend the money back in the day.
Now, you grew up in Boston as a Bruins fan. How big were the Bruins in Boston back then?
Huge, Bobby Orr, the big bad Bruins. There was nothing like it. I absolutely loved the Boston Bruins growing up, and have a lot of respect for the organization today. I think Chiarelli's done a great job there. Cam Neely, Claude Julien. They've kept the identity of that team, and they've changed it at the same time, which I think is awesome. It's great for the rivalry again. These two teams, when they get together, a lot of fun. And there was nothing like being part of that, being able to punch other guys in the mouth and, score a goal here and there. And a lot of fun.
And it's funny how this identity has changed and it hasn't over the years. I mean, the Bruins have always been seen as a bit of a blue-collar team. And in fact, if you're ever at TD Garden and you watch between the whistles in a game, you will see that what is celebrated on the scoreboard is not so much Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito filling the net and Kenny Hodge and so on. It's Dan Jonathan punching Pierre Bouchard in the mouth. And it's things that you'll see Terry O'Reilly, and you will see mayhem. And that's really what is celebrated there. And the thing that's fun about Boston is when you go there, even if the Bruins lose, and if they lose badly on their ice, so long as they are putting up a good fight and they are in the corners and they are scrapping and they are being belligerent, Bruins fans are kind of okay with that. They still want the 2 points, but they want to see their team roll up the sleeves and get dirty.
Well, in Chris's book, Fighting Back, if you haven't read it yet, you should. It's a great read. He says, there's a line in there saying, growing up in Boston where an Irish baby comes into this world with his chin jutted out and fists balled and looking for a fight. That sounds like you. That sounds like a Bruin.
And honestly, like the people who go there, the fans, they've always identified with that type of hockey. Boston's that rough and tumble type of city. A lot of people don't put up with much, no nonsense type of town. And the neighborhoods were strong, and the people were close in those neighborhoods. And that's the same when it came to the Bruins. They had such a backing from all those people in the city for years, and it's still that way, although the crowds have changed a little bit with, corporate and all the boxes and everything. That's still the core people that go to those games. Those Boston people know what it's all about.
It's an amazing city, too, with the bombing that they had during the Boston Marathon. I mean, Boston Strong became a hashtag on Twitter, and you saw how that entire community, how the city and beyond really kind of embraced the strength that was still within that community. So Bruins fans are an incredibly faithful lot. We sit in Montreal, and maybe we get a little smug sometimes saying that Habs fans are the greatest fans in the world. Well, you know what? Bruins fans certainly stick with their team, and they really care a lot about these guys, and they will fight to the life and the death. If you ever want to argue with a Bruins fan, I never have more fun on Twitter than during a Canadiens-Bruins game, because that's when all of the lunatics, the good and the bad, come out from under the rocks, and we have a great time.
I stay away from that Twitter during those times. You kidding me? If I can't punch someone in the mouth, I ain't getting in an argument.
How many computer screens are you going to bust up with your knuckles, right?
Never. Very calm, Dave. I'm very calm.
Well, another thing I learned about you reading your book, Chris, is that you didn't play organized hockey until you were in grade 5.
Yeah, I did a lot of public skating. You know, they didn't start organized hockey till later in my neighborhood. They built a rink at the end of the street, and I public skated all the time, which is the most important part of the game, right? You have to be a good skater before you can play. I'm not going to say I was a good skater right away, but that's what I spent most of my time on, and I played my hockey on the street, and then eventually when they formed the league, the Charlie Doyle League, I got playing in that, and you know, the rest is history.
I don't know how many people know that Chris Nilan is still in the National Hockey League record books, for one thing. You must know what the record is.
I think it's more, what was it, 42 minutes in a game? 10 different penalties?
Most penalties in a game, yeah.
And 10 different
Chris is the only guy who has 10 different penalties in one hockey game. 31st of March, 91 against Hartford at Boston.
I remember it well.
6 minors, 2 majors, a misconduct, a game misconduct. 9 guys are tied for 9 penalties, but you still sit atop.
Major for elbowing Bobby Holick, broke his nose. It was one of them games before the playoffs. We were playing Hartford in the playoffs, so we were kind of like,
just
okay, we're going to spook you before the playoffs. And Rob Brown, who had hair plugs in, I got a misconduct later in the game. He
for insulting his hair plugs or what?
Get crazy with me, and I gave him a little dope slap, knocked him down. And he was trying to scratch me, and I grabbed his hair, and I pulled the plugs out. Actually, and
awesome. Okay.
we taped them up. We brought them in the room. I still had them in my room when I got in my hand when I got kicked out of the game.
This
I
is
went in
when
the room and I gave them to the trainer, and he taped them. He taped them to the board and said, "Rob Brown's hair," and because everybody knew he had plugs.
And Rob Brown wore a helmet every day from that day forward,
and I've
right?
seen him since, and I felt so bad. I met him in Edmonton. I hated him on the ice. He was a little gnat, and when I met him out in Edmonton, what a nice guy. He was just a nice guy. I'm just sorry about the hair.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Knuckles tore all my hair out. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Now, Dave, I know you're a hockey history buff. You have an interesting story about how the Boston Bruins got their name.
If we have any Bruins fans listening, we'll give you 1 second just to turn away because you're not going to want to hear this.
Spoiler alert!
The Boston Bruins were in fact named by a Montreal native. It's a woman by the name of Bessie Moss, who was a Montreal secretary to Art Ross, who was the first general manager of the Boston Bruins in 1924. Charles Adams had bought the team. Actually, the Bruins were the first NHL franchise in the United States. They didn't know what they were going to call a team. Adams owned a franchise, or he was a magnate of grocery stores, and the colors of this store were gold and they were brown. And for some reason, Bessie Moss thought that Bruins, being a bear, would be a pretty good name, and so it was adopted. So if any Bruins fans want to know how your team got their name, it's because a Montreal native gave it to you.
I thought you were going to say Betsy Ross. Betsy Moss?
Bessie Moss.
Bessie Moss.
Bessie Moss.
Okay.
Now, who was your favorite Bruin when you were growing up in Boston?
Bobby Orr, you know, there's no question. And then, I mean, I was a little older at the time, but O'Reilly, obviously. I love Johnny McKenzie, you know, Espo, Cheevers, Swoop Carlton. Swoop Carlton.
You know, nicknames like that.
You know, Dallas Smith, Rick Smith, Don Ory. I mean, I knew every one of them. I absolutely loved the Boston Bruins growing up. And again, you know, I know Harry Sinden gets a knock because he never spent the money there. But ownership, you know, has to okay that too. And back in the day, they were so worried about fiscal responsibility. And once Shirelli got in there and the league changed, salary cap and everything, they started spending the money and they spent it right. And they have a heck of a hockey team over there.
Intelligent management just does such a great job. I mean, that's the thing. And it has to be, so many fans want the results now. It's instant gratification. That's what almost the entire world has become with social media, everything else. You want everything now. You want it 5 minutes ago. A clever, I think, manager of a National Hockey League team is going to look to the future as much as he is the present. I mean, a guy like Marc Bergevin now understands that he's going to build the Montreal Canadiens through the draft, and he's going to build it through the farm. You're going to go out and maybe hand-pick the occasional free agent, but Chiarelli is doing a terrific job. And I mean, you start to build a team that not just is going to be good one year, but they're going to be good year after year after year, and they will always be a contender.
Yeah, no. TSN did a top 10 list a couple of years ago on the top 10 moments in the Habs-Bruins rivalry. Number 1, of course, the too many men on the ice penalty with Don Cherry.
Ouch.
And number 2 was a bench-clearing brawl in 1986 at Boston Garden that I think you might have had a little bit of something to do with.
Yeah. I don't know what happened
Anything to do with hair plugs?
The boys got a little upset that evening. Jay Miller jumped on Chelios, and, you know, I was trying to get to him. I just couldn't let it happen, you know. I have to be there, and had to do what I had to do. And, you know, going off the ice, I always had to go by the Bruins bench. And, you know, enough with the fans throwing pizza and beer and screaming at you. You know, I can deal with that. But when I was going off the ice that time, Ken Linsman, who I don't know who would ever trust him. I didn't trust him. When I was walking by, stood up, like, kind of made a move toward me. And I just saw him in the corner of my eye, and I threw a punch. That's it. I'll take the bench on. Why not? And things got crazy, and it was actually a lot of fun.
It's funny how so many moments of the Canadiens and the Bruins are linked. I mean, I think these two clubs are intrinsically linked. I mean, they will be forever known, I mean, for some of the battles that they've had against each other. I mean, Hal Laycoe and the Rocket, March 13, 55. I mean, that is what touched off eventually the Richard riot. 4 days later, it was Rocket and Laycoe getting into it at Boston Garden, and it was a stick over the head and a punch thrown, and then a linesman gets duked, and across the street from where we're shooting this today at the Sun Life building, Rocket Richard is suspended for 3 games, and we have the Richard riot, which changes the face of hockey in the city, and that was because of the Bruins.
I've been to that Sun Life building quite a few times to see Brian O'Neill. Not fun.
The principal's office, right?
Yeah.
Was there a Bruins player that you hated to play against, or that you didn't like?
You know, not really. I mean, I can't think. I mean, Kenny Linsman, when you think, you know, he was just a little gnat, always getting at you, using a stick. And you know what he had to? He was a small guy. He kept his stick up to protect himself. And you never kind of knew what he was going to do. And that was good for him because small guys at that time to survive in the league, you had to protect yourself. Yeah, guys I would protect you, but certainly Kenny Linsman was a guy who would protect himself, and he'd do it with his stick. But he was kind of, you know, a gnat to play against. But for the most part, you know, just playing against the Bruins was a lot of fun. You know, there's no problem getting up for the game, getting ready to play that game. You had to be on your toes. You know, I always, obviously, knew who the potential fighters were and had to be ready for that, but there was nothing like scoring a goal against the Boston Bruins. A lot of fun. I love scoring a goal against the Bees.
In Montreal, there's a lot of people obviously hate the Bruins, Dave, but there's a lot of Bruins fans in Montreal also. I guess that Bobby Orr has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, Bobby Orr doesn't certainly. You go across the river to Ganawagé to really the Mohawk Reserve, and I mean, there are so many Bruins fans over there, and that I think has to do with the iron workers. It has to do with the history. It has to do with the blue-collar work ethic of the Bruins, and they just love the fact that the Bruins would not be afraid to mix it up. And you go to any Canadiens Bruins game at the Bell Center, and you see the number of Boston jerseys that are in that building. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing to see, and I love that when a team like the Bruins, any of the original 6 teams have a good following in Montreal, but the Bruins, I mean, the Leafs fans come here, and there's a lot of rabble rousers and stuff, but the Bruins fans really have a really great passion for watching their team and watching them play the Canadiens and hopefully beat the Canadiens.
My theory on that is, you know, I look at the old school grandfathers and fathers who come over here from Italy and all the natives here from Kanawaki and up north and stuff. Stan Jonathan played for them,
First
was a
Nations,
native,
yeah,
First
sure,
Nations.
sure.
And Phil Esposito, all the old Italian guys in the East End, you know, they passed that down to their kids. Some kids didn't go along with it. Some did, and that's why I think we see so many up here, to be honest with you, along with that blue-collar mindset. You know, a lot of people identify with that, and the Boston Bruins was certainly that.
The Bruins alumni are often up here, too, doing fundraisers and various charity events. Yeah, they're always on the rink over there. In fact, there was a bit of a reenactment a couple years ago where Stan Jonathan and Pierre Bouchard met and shook hands at center ice, and that's the first time these guys had actually stopped and talked and exchanged views about that famous game. And so it's an amazing thing to see how many Bruins fans are here.
I felt bad for him when he went down there. It was a good fight. He was doing good. And, you know, both throwing, and boy, you
it happens, right?
Yeah, but no matter how many times I see guys get hit when they go down, because I've been there. I know what it's like to get hit like that. I feel so bad for him. Like I saw Todd Ewan give it to Proby that night. He knocked him out. I seen Proby knock guys out. I've knocked the guy out. You feel bad, but it's either you or him. But when I see it, it still doesn't get any easier. Pierre Bouchard, ooh, that was a tough one. To a nice guy, too.
It's one of the memories of this series, and we can only hope that the Bruins and Habs meet again in the playoffs this year.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. We'll be back next week with a new one.